It's time for Africa. Welcome to the show. This week we examine how best Africa can meet its challenges and truly transform into a prosperous continent for all. We have an incredible panel session. We get your views on the issues. And we have Africa's top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gichuru. This week, the Africa Leadership Dialogues comes to you from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where we were hosted by His Excellency Benjamin Mkapa, the former president of Tanzania. We focus on how best Africa can meet the challenges of transformation that are required right across the continent. On our panel this week, His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, the former president of South Africa, His Excellency Benjamin Mkapa, the former president of Tanzania, and Yash Tandon, a Ugandan policymaker, political activist, professor, author, and intellectual. Let's get straight to their views on the issues. I want to start with a panel I held a few months ago. And this was organized by the African Leadership Network. Many of you know this organization. And we were discussing China-Africa relations. Now, during the course of the discussion, a lot of people were sharing their concerns about the China-Africa relationship. Lots of things to say. Then we posed the question, well, we can see what Africa doesn't want from China. What does Africa want from China? Is there an Africa, a united Africa? Does she know what she wants?
Yes, I'm sure we do. Of course we do. There's something very important about the relations between Africa and China, in that it actually addresses the issue of partnership in a very conscious and deliberate way, that there has to be a partnership. We negotiated you know that these meetings between China and Africa called the Africa-China Forum. We had a meeting in China, one of these summit meetings in Beijing, and we discussed this. And we actually drafted a formal agreement between the African continent and the Chinese about how to structure the partnership. And that agreement contains what Africa wants out of China and what Africa does not want out of China. The president at the time was Hu Jintao. And we said to him, no, President, this is a very good agreement between China and Africa. The problem is going to arise with the implementation. And it will arise with the implementation because there is an imbalance in the strength, in the negotiating strength between us as a continent, as individual countries, and you. So you will go and negotiate these agreements with particular African countries. They may very well have this agreement in front of them, our countries, but they won't have the capacity to negotiate an agreement with you such that it remains loyal to this vision. So he says, I agree. So I said, well, President, what we propose is that let's then have a bilateral agreement between China and South Africa, that we will have free access to any agreement you negotiate on the continent. Because certainly South Africa would not have a capacity problem of that kind. To have a look at what you've agreed in order to advise that it is contrary to this agreement. So we agreed. Exactly because the African continent knew what it wanted, it could negotiate that agreement with China. And number two, it is possible to structure the relationship between Africa and China consistent with that agreement, so that then you don't have these complaints. And lastly, in that context, I'm talking about a specific case. I'll talk about other cases of partnership later. If the relationship between China and Africa goes wrong, it's our fault.
Now, it's embarrassing as a continent for us to sit back and say we don't have the capacity. And this is exactly what we had to do, South Africa had to do, was say we don't know if other African countries will recognize. So we're standing up here for Africa. But we have talent across the African continent. We are not ignorant. We have education systems. We have incredible people, young people even, doing amazing things, not just on the continent, but outside. So where is the gap? And I think it comes back to, do we have the capacity to represent our interests? And if we don't, why don't we? If it's not the right people in the right positions, why don't we have them there? Yash.
We now have a better competence in understanding the technical language of World Trade Organization and EPA. Why? Because one of the reasons we find is that the staff within the Ministry of Industry and Trade goes on changing. We train them, they come to our workshops, and they come well equipped with the language and art of negotiation, skill of negotiation and art of negotiation. 6 months down the road, they are in some other ministry. The heavy turnover of people at the state level. So our state does not have the capacity, except those of our officials who are more or less permanently stationed in Geneva in the World Trade Organization setting. Now they know what they're doing. When they negotiate a text in Geneva, that gets undermined later on, and that's the second reason. And the reason that gets undermined is that in spite of the extremely good technical work done by our experts in Geneva, when it comes to taking a decision at the highest level, and I do mean just level of the head of state, they do not have that clout. And I will not give it to concrete examples, but I know that many of our presidents get direct calls from the presidents of European countries. Sign or else, Ukrainian type of sanctions. So that's another reason there's a power asymmetry. There's excess asymmetry. Our experts don't have that link up. And the heads of states are not fully informed. And when I was able then to go step by step showing why it is that the European subsidies in agriculture, for example, undermines us, the expert would say, no, but Europeans no longer have subsidies. That's not true, because they shift subsidies. So the point I'm making is twofold. One, there's a very quick turnover of staff. We do have capacity. We have not institutionalized it at the state level.
Thank you so much. And President Mkapa, I come to you with these issues. It looks like there are gaps. Presidents are not even well informed on the actual situations on the ground. I think the issue of meritocracy also plays into this to some extent, but we're told by Yash there is capacity, but there's high turnover. So there might be an institutional problem. From your perspective, how do we strengthen our relations with strategic partners and position Africa in a place where she can take her space confidently at the negotiating table?
Oh, I have to be a little counter-revolutionary. Strategic partnerships are for transformation. Transformation to what? We can have partnership to build Dubais in Maputo, Dubais in Dar es Salaam, Dubais in Lagos. Is that the kind of social transformation we want? Is that the kind of economic transformation we want? Transformation for what? Do we realize that partnership is about the defense of interests, the reconciliation or the balancing of interests between those who are partnering? During the independence struggle, I remember in Central Africa, we always used to say, we have a partnership here between the horse and the rider. This is a partnership that ignores or deliberately undermines our interests. and actively promotes their interests, whether it is agricultural development or transformation, whether it is industrial transformation, whether it is international economic cooperation. It's their interests that prevail. So the first thing I would like us to see is to agree what areas of immediate transformation we need partnership about and how we go about that.
Why don't we represent our own interests? Why don't we sit there with confidence and put our demands on the table?
Because we have a spirit of chronic dependence. If you pick the papers, or listen to the radio, you're always being told about what these benefactors are doing to us. This one is bringing this one is bringing this one has done this. What better illustration of self-abnegation in terms of responsibility can you think of? Drop the bucket where you are. That's what our first founding president said. Drop the bucket. Try to mobilize yourself before you even look for a partner. But here, we don't want to look. We welcome them before we even thought through. That's what I meant by saying we haven't even thought through what development or transformation we want, and we haven't prioritized it. Chronic self-dependence. Chronic dependence. That's what I think the problem is.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
I'd like to shift or extend the definition of partners, because we're starting to see new partners growing in strength, and these are not bilateral, they're not countries, be it philanthropic foundations with money coming from individuals, that exceeds ODA in many cases. You have remittances by citizens, which is flowing into individual hands, again, in terms of quantum. Growing in number, and then with the SDGs now, we have increased talk about the private sector being the dominant development partner. And I'm curious about the reflections, particularly of the Excellencies, about the framework that our leaders can create to manage these different partners' interests within the overall goal of trying to transform our economies, bearing in mind that we need to be clear about what that transformation looks like. But reflecting back to the frameworks that were laid out with the traditional partners, bilateral governments, are there any lessons that we can bring to bear in this current situation and looking ahead?
Whose responsibility is it really to think for Africa and for Africa's development? Whose job is it? Is it of the Chinese or is it of the Africans? The Chinese have their needs. The Chinese need to develop their people, they need to develop their industries, they need to build their infrastructure, they need resources, and they'll buy them from anywhere, and they pay a good price, and they don't put a gun to your head like some other people did to us. That is what they want. And what I like about the Chinese, they have not been secretive about this. If you go online, you're going to find TED Talks from prominent Chinese who've said, we are looking out for the interests of our people. The Chinese understand. And this is something that the Chinese agree on, that everybody must look out for their own interests. So when the Chinese go out, they look out for their own interests. Why do they assume everybody else is looking out for their own interests? Now, if you are not, don't blame them. Don't blame them. They are trying to take care of themselves. Africans are waiting for other people to worry about them, to solve their problems, and to even think through their problems.
What kind of partnerships are needed for Africa to truly fulfill her potential, and what kind of leadership is needed for that to happen as well? Yash, I'll begin with you and come through this way.
Partnership is a wrong word. The word to use is alliances, not partnerships. Partnerships leads to what President Mkapa said, horse and rider partnership. Why do we need alliances? Because between 1985 and 2007, economics ruled the world, economism. Economic ideology, globalization and so on. Since 2007, situation has changed. Politics rule the world. Security rules the world. We are in a war situation. We are in a war situation. Ukraine is the beginning of that. And Africa, Europe has declared war on Africa. Our resources are under war, under attack. So we need alliances, not partnerships. And in the alliances, I think the BRICS, looking at it in a global context, is a proper alliance for us. China has problems, Russia has problems too. But BRICS have been able to create an alternative banking system in South Africa the other day when they met. And that's the kind of institutional decoupling. I'm using another word, we have to decouple ourselves with a globalized world dominated by erstwhile imperial powers. We have to decouple and create our own structures. And we have to create our own currency. Why? Because that so-called development model in the West has collapsed. Finance has trumped production. Money for making money. And banks, I live now in retired life in the UK, and I find that even the British government and the social democratic governments in Europe are taking away social services for the poor people and giving to the banks. Banks are being bailed out, the people are being left without services because that model has collapsed. Finances rule the world, and what we need is another model of transformation.
President Mbeki, I'm with you now. We were talking about alliance. Well, I asked about partnerships, and we've shifted it now to alliances. Elsie raises a very interesting issue about new players now who are in this game, and what lessons have we learned in the past? Your thoughts on these issues?
Yash has just said we need to decouple from this traditional Western partners of ours and couple with BRICS. Sure, this might happen maybe in 50 years, I don't know. In the meantime, we've got an actual practical reality. You can't terminate starting on Monday next week.
No.
This relationship between Africa and the West. So we are faced with a challenge to help to define it. They may not be allies, but we can't walk away from the challenge we face to try to structure our relations with these Western countries that we gain the sort of benefit that we want. Can't avoid this. There's no way you can run away from it.
Let me come to you now, President Mkapa. You said it, dependency. How then do we break the patterns? And especially now, since we've been able to identify it, we're saying this is what the problem is. How do we remain locked in this? We must break the patterns.
Well, first we must summon the will, or our citizens must make their leaders summon the will to drop the bucket where they are.
What does that mean? You said that. Explain.
It means that the best partner you have for development are your own people.
Okay.
They are the ones who are going to build the trees. They are the ones who are going to produce food security. Get them to acknowledge that as their first basic responsibility.
Right.
That's the fundamental identity. Drop the bucket where we are. There is more trade between African countries than there is between the African countries and any part of the world. I think so. That's what the figures I heard the other day. But I see no conscious effort to see this as the strategy for development, for social transformation. No. You can trade much more with each other. You can cooperate industrializing as a region, whether it is SADC or the East African Community and so on. You can do so. We heard this business of lack of consultation or harmonization of the policies with the oil and gas industry. Why? Do you really need a strategic partner to summon the will to say, wait a minute, let us have a common position about the terms under which our resources are going to be explored and they are going to be developed and so on? Why then do we start these organizations called ECOWAS and the EAC and so on? Why? Unless it's just for show and photo opportunities and stuff like that. Summon the will to start with where you are and with your neighbors. A lot can be done about that. If you don't do that, then those who have already done so in Europe, will come to you one after another and say, partnership agreement. And that's what they are doing. I am very saddened indeed, Really, these economic partnership agreements are going to do a death blow to agricultural development, food security. They are going to a major blow to any hope of industrializing here. And since we don't get together to talk about policy of oil and gas development, they are going to divide us and exploit us mercilessly, and we will remain aghast. What is happening?
Yeah. Very quickly now, give us 25 years from now, where do you see Africa in 25 years, and what are the strategic alliances that we need to get there? Yash, please.
We have been talking about the Chinese. 5,000 years ago, Sun Tzu, S-U-N-T-Z-U, Sun Tzu, a military strategist, wrote a book called On War. He made a distinction between strategy and tactics. Strategy is long, visionary, tactics is now. President Mbeki, when I'm talking about decoupling, it's not an event, it's a process. It's a long process. Strategy means having a vision, long-term vision. We had visions imposed on us from outside. It's called 2020 and 2050 and all that. Imposed on us. No, we have to have African vision. And then tactics. Sun Tzu also said that we shall win the war without fighting. He was against General Sun Tzu, against war. He said we can win the war without fighting because if you work from reality to realism, reality is here and now, we have to deal with that, President Mbeki, you're quite right. Realism is when you have a vision we want to move towards. And he says if you can prepare properly, we don't even have to war if you strategize. Now, we need strategy, vision. And I think there are a lot of African leadership, even amongst us here, who have vision. The point I'm making is the following. Decoupling is a process. The process has already begun.
25 years is too far away. Yeah. I know the AU talks about 2063.
50, yeah.
But where is that going to take us? You don't know anything about what's going to happen in 2063. And you can plan and visionize or whatever the right word is, but what will happen in 50 years' time will be very far from whatever you vision you decide. Why don't we think of much shorter practical term periods on which then we can plan to make the impact that we need. President Mkapa is talking. First of all, we need a partnership within our own countries with his view. Second, we need to be able to act together as a continent, because acting alone, we're going to be defeated.
Absolutely.
We'll be defeated.
Absolutely.
But why are we failing to act together? That's part of our reality. That's part of the actual reality of the continent today, this cohesion that you need among the leadership of our continent is not happening. As a consequence, if you get all of these things happening on the continent, I'm asking, why are we allowing it to happen, and what do we do to correct it?
I think we have identified one key tool of transformation, or at least reappraisal, and that is the APRM, that we must really strengthen it and use it as a vehicle for questioning the competence and dedication of leadership, such as there is. I think that is indisputable. I think we have agreed that capacity in terms of education and skills is key, because I believe that these requirements are used by the riders to ride our horse, whether it is freely given to us or we seek and buy it by way of expertise and so on. It is made worse because we are not very clear about where we want to go. So that's another area that we'll need to explore some more. I think we haven't done enough a conversation about the youth and elders, because it is an increasing cry in many countries now that the youth are not being given a chance to govern, to rule. That the elders, whether they're the first generation or second generation, are reserving all the opportunities and the power to themselves. We don't give them enough. I don't think we have tackled this question enough, because that is a potential for subversion if it's not well channeled to production.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Fascinating insights there, but what do you think about meeting Africa's transformation? Let's get your views.
This week we asked you, how can Africa address the challenges that come with economic and political transformation? Abubakar Usman says, there is need to be more proactive. We need to learn how to anticipate problems and prepare how to solve them before they arrive.
Hi, my name is Jared Ohenga, watching ALD from Nairobi. In my view, I think African countries can counter the challenges of economic and political transformation by investing hugely in human capital, infrastructure, and the promotion of innovation and technological transfer.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Twitter @AfricaLD, and on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
Time now for Africa's Top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we feature the most competitive economies. This is according to the World Economic Forum report. The Global Competitiveness Report from 2014 to 2015 assesses the competitiveness of 144 economies, providing insight into the drivers of productivity and prosperity. Competitiveness is defined as the set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of a country. The level of productivity, in turn, sets the level of prosperity that can be earned by an economy. The countries were ranked out of a possible 7. Starting us off at number 10 is Lesotho. The country is positioned at number 107 globally with a score of 3.73. Coming in at number 9 is Gabon. It is ranked at number 106 globally with a score of 3.74. Zambia is positioned at number 8 with a score of 3.86 and a global ranking at number 96. At number 7 is Seychelles with a score of 3.91. It is ranked at position 92 globally. Slotted in at number 6 is Kenya with a score of 3.93. It is ranked 90th globally. Positioned at number 5 is Namibia. It is ranked at position 88 globally with a score of 3.96. Taking the number 4 spot is Botswana with a score of 4.15. It is ranked at number 74 globally. At number 3 is Rwanda. It is ranked 62nd globally with a score of 4.27. South Africa comes in at number 2 with a score of 4.35 and a global ranking at number 56. At number 1 this week is Mauritius. It is ranked at number 39 globally with a score of 4.52. And that is Africa's Top 10 this week.
And we end with powerful words, an African proverb that goes, Do not look where you fell, but where you slipped. It is not in our failures, but in the mistakes that lead up to the failures that we find true learning. And so look to those mistakes and not to the failures. Blessings to you and blessings